The first gun control organization in American history wasn't a policy group. It wasn't funded by billionaires. It didn't have a slick logo or a press team. It was the Ku Klux Klan. Let that land. The very first organized effort to disarm Americans by force wasn't about crime. It wasn't about mass shootings. It was about power and keeping one group of people defenseless so another group could stay in control. And if you think that's ancient history that has nothing to do with the debate happening right now, then you haven't been paying attention. Because the legal framework they built in the 1860s, it's still standing. They just updated the branding. Before this video is over, you're going to see exactly how it was done and who's still doing it today. You need to understand something before we go any further. This isn't a history lecture. This affects you right now. Think about what it costs to legally own a firearm in a state like California, New York, or Illinois. Permit fees, mandatory training courses, storage requirements, background check delays, and in some counties, a may-issue license where a government official decides at their personal discretion whether you deserve your constitutional right. That is a poll tax on self-defense. Your grandparents' generation understood that poll taxes weren't about civic order. They were about keeping certain people out. Today's gun control apparatus uses the exact same mechanics. It prices out the poor and it buries the process in bureaucracy. It gives officials discretionary power over who gets to protect their family. If you're middle class, you might be able to navigate it. But if you're working 2 jobs and raising kids in a high-crime neighborhood, the people who need that protection the most, you get priced out of your own constitutional right. That is not an accident. It was never an accident, and the history proves it. The story they're not teaching, not in schools, not in the news, is coming up next. And it starts with a legal document that denied an entire race the right to exist as citizens, specifically because citizenship would give them access to firearms. To be fair, and I'm going to be fair here, the strongest argument for gun control sounds reasonable on its face. The logic goes like this. Fewer guns means fewer gun deaths. Every other developed nation has stricter gun laws and lower rates of gun violence. Regulations on cars didn't end driving, and regulations on firearms won't end self-defense. Reasonable restrictions are just common sense public safety policy. Historians like Saul Cornell at Fordham University makes the point that the story is genuinely complex. Not every gun law ever passed was racially motivated. Some were written by people who sincerely believed they were reducing violence. And in theory, a law can be race neutral on paper and enforced that way in practice. That is the steel man. I gave it to you straight. But here's what they leave out. The American gun control tradition did not begin with good faith policymakers trying to reduce crime. It began with one specific goal: make sure Black Americans could not defend themselves. And the people who built that system weren't subtle about it. They wrote it down. Judges said it out loud from the bench. Legislators stated it in committee. The record exists, you just have to read it. What they're selling you is a policy debate. What they're hiding from you is the origin story. And the origin story changes everything. Let's go straight to the source. Before the Civil War, Georgia made it unlawful for any free person of color to own, use, or carry firearms. Texas and Florida enacted complete gun bans for slaves by 1840. Mississippi followed in 1852. This wasn't fringe policy. It was the law across the entire South. In 1857, the Supreme Court handed down the Dred Scott decision. Here's what most people don't know about that ruling. The justices argued that Black men could not be citizens, in part because citizenship would give them the right to keep and carry arms. The court didn't hide the connection. They stated it plainly. Deny citizenship, deny the right to self-defense. The two were inseparable. Then the Civil War ends. Slavery is abolished and the South states panic. Enter the Black Codes. Within months of the Confederacy's defeat, Southern legislators passed sweeping laws to reestablish control. Mississippi's provision was typical. No freedman shall keep or carry firearms of any kind or any ammunition without explicit police permission. Alabama prohibited any freedman, mulatto, or free person of color from owning firearms. Florida prohibited Black Americans from possessing guns without a license issued by a judge, and violators were punished by public whipping, up to 39 lashes. 39 lashes for owning a firearm in the United States of America. The KKK formalized what the Black Code started. Civil rights attorney Albion Tourze, the lawyer who represented Plessy and Plessy v. Ferguson, documented it directly. In areas where the Klan took control, almost universally, the first thing done was to disarm the Negroes and leave them defenseless. Then Reconstruction forced the repeal of those explicit laws, so the legislators got creative. In 1871, Tennessee passed the Army and Navy Law. It banned the sale of any handgun except expensive, high-grade military models. Ex-Confederate soldiers already owned those guns. Freed Black Americans, cash poor just out of slavery, could only afford the cheaper, simpler firearms. The law banned exactly what they could afford to buy. It never mentioned race because it didn't have to. In 1941, not 1871, Justice Rivers H. Buford, a Florida Supreme Court justice, wrote in a concurring opinion that the state's handgun licensing law had been passed for the purpose of disarming Negro laborers, and that the statute was never intended to be applied to the white population, and in practice has never been so applied. A sitting judge writing it down in 1941. Now jump to 1967, California. The Black Panthers had studied the law carefully. They knew open carry was legal. So they began armed patrols in Oakland neighborhoods to document and deter police brutality. It was entirely lawful. The police had no legal ground to stop them, but that changed fast. On May 2, 1967, 30 Black Panthers walked onto the steps of the California State Capitol, openly carrying .357 Magnums, 12-gauge shotguns, and .45 caliber pistols. They were exercising their legal rights. Bobby Seale read a statement on the steps. This legislation, he said, was aimed at keeping the Black people disarmed and powerless. He was right, and it passed anyway. Republican Assemblyman Don Mulford, with the active support of the NRA, rushed the bill through. Governor Ronald Reagan signed it into law on July 28, 1967. Reagan said he saw no reason why on the street today a citizen should be carrying a loaded weapon. California has had some of the strictest gun laws in America ever since. The Mulford Act still stands today, and by every measure, it did nothing to reduce violent crime. What it did do was make the Black Panthers' lawful activities illegal and hand more discretionary power to the police. If you're a conservative who thinks gun control is a left-wing idea, then you need to sit with that for a moment. A Republican governor, backed by the NRA, signed the law that launched the modern gun control movement. Why? Because the people carrying the guns this time weren't the ones they wanted armed. If you're finding this valuable and it's shifting how you think about this issue, subscribe right now. This channel exists to give you the history and the analysis that you won't get anywhere else. Here's the principle underneath all of this. Every single law we just covered followed the same pattern. Identify a group the state wants controlled. Build a facially neutral legal mechanism. Enforce it selectively and call it public safety. The non-aggression principle is simple. You do not have the right to initiate force against another person. A law-abiding citizen carrying a firearm has not initiated force against anyone. But the state's response, across 2 centuries, has been to treat the presence of an armed minority as the threat rather than address actual violence. This, my friends, is what unchecked government power does. It doesn't eliminate danger, it just redirects it. Red flag law removals and stop and frisk weapons enforcement fall disproportionately on low-income and minority communities. The same communities these laws were built to target. This isn't a Democrat problem or a Republican problem. Ronald Reagan proved that. The NRA proved that. When the people holding guns become inconvenient to the powerful, The powerful change the laws. Every time. Both parties, no exceptions. Here's what the next chapter looks like if the current trend holds. In the next 12 to 18 months, red flag law expansion and universal background check mandates build a federal infrastructure of discretionary disarmament. The enforcement won't be uniform. It never is. Within 5 years, digital licensing systems, smart gun mandates, and national registration databases create a modern version of the post-Reconstruction permit system with the same capacity for selective enforcement, now powered by algorithms. Over the next decade, as permit costs rise and the legal process grows longer and more expensive, self-defense becomes a luxury product. The people who need it the most get priced out entirely. The domino effect is simple. If they can control your Second Amendment right on government permission today, they already have the legal framework to do the same to your First, your Fourth, and your Fifth. The Second Amendment is not one right among many. It is the right that protects all the others. Remove it and the rest become requests. First, know your state's actual gun laws. From the legislative text, not from the news. Most people don't. That ignorance is exactly what the system counts on. Second, support constitutional carry legislation in your state. Your right to self-defense shouldn't require a government permission slip. If your representative is blocking it, that's worth a phone call. Third, share this video with one person who still believes gun control is a new, progressive safety idea, because it's not. It's the oldest tool of political control in American history. And if you want to go deeper, analysis, sourcing, commentary you won't find in mainstream media, go to shesright1776.com and sign up for the newsletter. Straight to your inbox, no algorithm in between. And while you're there, grab the free downloads I've created full of important information that you need to know right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. This is the kind of content that gets buried. Your subscription keeps it alive and matters so much more than you think. The Black Panthers understood something in 1967 that too many Americans have forgotten. An armed citizen is a free citizen. They carried their guns legally. They cited the law chapter and verse, and the government changed the law to stop them. They didn't come for the guns. They came for their guns. Now ask yourself, in the story they're writing today, who are you?